All right, let's jump right in. We're going to talk about something incredible today: how one single court case, a case sparked by a newspaper article, totally changed the game for justice in India. This is the story of Hussainara Khatoon.
Seriously, just stop for a second and imagine this. What if you were thrown in jail for a crime you haven't even been convicted of, and you're stuck there for years? I mean, really picture it. You're behind bars. You haven't had your day in court, but the months just keep turning into years. You're just waiting, locked away from your entire life, your family, with absolutely no idea when it's going to end. This wasn't just some scary what-if scenario. Before 1979, for thousands of people in India, this was their shocking reality. The very system that was supposed to deliver justice had basically, it had forgotten they even existed.
Okay, so how in the world was something like this even possible? To get to the bottom of it, let's jump into our first section: justice behind bars. We're going to look at the incredible plight of what are called under-trial prisoners. So what does that term, under-trial prisoner, actually mean? Well, the definition sounds simple enough. It's someone who's in jail, waiting for their trial for a crime they haven't been convicted of. But here's the kicker: they are legally presumed innocent until proven guilty. And yet, there they are, living behind bars, sometimes for years, just trapped in this legal limbo. And this whole crisis really blew up in the state of Bihar. That's what kicked this all off. We are talking about thousands of people, men, women, even children, just languishing in these jails. And get this is the part that's just mind-blowing. Many of them had already been locked up for longer than the maximum possible sentence they could have gotten if they were found guilty. And to make it all worse, most had no lawyer, no legal help, and zero idea when or even if they would ever see the inside of a courtroom. Okay, so this horrifying situation in Bihar's jails obviously couldn't just be ignored. And that brings us to our next section: the case for freedom, and the landmark lawsuit that dragged this whole mess into the light. Hussainara Khatoon versus the Home Secretary, State of Bihar. Now, this wasn't your typical lawsuit, where one person sues another. This was something called a public interest litigation, or a PIL. And a PIL is this really powerful tool in India where basically anyone can bring a major public issue to the courts. In this case, a lawyer filed the lawsuit not just for one person, but on behalf of all of these forgotten prisoners, taking their cause straight to the Supreme Court of India. And the year all of this went down? 1979. Just burn that date into your memory. It marks a huge, fundamental turning point for Indian law. So the case is now in front of the Supreme Court. What happens next? Well, that leads us right into our third section: a landmark Supreme Court ruling. The court's decision was about to set a brand new standard for the entire justice system, one that had to be, in the court's own words, reasonable, fair, and just. And here it is. This is the absolute heart of the ruling. The Supreme Court basically said, look, a slow trial is an unfair trial, period. You know that old saying, justice delayed is justice denied? Well, this ruling gave that idea some serious legal muscle. The right to have your case heard quickly wasn't just a nice thought anymore. The court declared it was an essential ingredient of any fair legal process. But wait a second. Where did the court even get this right from? I mean, they didn't just invent a new law. No, they did something truly groundbreaking. They said this right to a speedy trial was already there, kind of hidden inside Article 21 of the Constitution, the fundamental right to life and personal liberty. The court's logic was brilliant. How can you have a life with dignity, which Article 21 guarantees, if the state can just lock you away indefinitely without even giving you a trial? So, this powerful new way of looking at Article 21 created this massive ripple effect. It didn't just create one new principle, it basically gave birth to two new fundamental rights. And that's what we're going to dig into in Section 4, how this one single judgment completely rewrote the rules of Indian law. And the change was, it was absolutely dramatic. Just look at the difference. Before this ruling, the system pretty much allowed for indefinite pretrial detention, and having a lawyer was a privilege for those who could afford it. But after, two things became completely non-negotiable: the right to a speedy trial and the right to free legal aid for anyone who was too poor to hire their own lawyer. It was a total game changer. Okay, let's break down that first big one, the right to a speedy trial. What this really means is that the government can't just use the long, slow legal process as a form of punishment itself. It's a shield, a protection against being trapped in the system for years on end, making sure that if you're accused of something, you get your day in court before your life just wastes away. And the second rate is just as revolutionary: free legal aid.
This was huge. It meant that your access to justice no longer depended on how much money you had. The court made it crystal clear that a fair trial is impossible if one side has a lawyer and the other doesn't just because they're poor. From that moment on, if you couldn't afford a lawyer, the state was legally required to give you one. This leveled the playing field in a really profound way. So these rights were put in place decades ago. Which brings us to our final section, the Khatoon legacy. Let's talk about why this case isn't just some dusty old history lesson and why it still matters so much today. Okay, let's wrap this up and look at the key takeaways. What's the core legacy here? First, a speedy trial is not a favor the government does for you, it's your fundamental right. Second, being poor can never again be a reason you're denied access to justice. And both of these huge ideas were woven directly into the right to life under Article 21. And the impact wasn't just theoretical, it was immediate. The court ordered the release of thousands of under-trial prisoners, a real, tangible, life-changing result. You see, in the end, the Hussainara Khatoon case did way more than just free a group of prisoners. It empowered every single citizen of India by forcing the justice system itself to become more humane, more fair, and more accountable to the people it's supposed to serve. And that really leaves us with one final and I think crucial question. This case established these incredible rights back in 1979. But when you look at the justice system today, you have to ask yourself, how well are they actually being protected? And that is definitely something to think about.